maybe we'll just start by chatting a bit about how we got into interior photography in the first place.
Sure.
So the first time I ever heard of interior photography was actually in high school, and surprisingly, it was a pretty academic focused high school, but we actually had a really passionate photography teacher, and he brought in an interior photographer to talk. Hey there. And I was just like, I'd never thought of photography jobs outside of like photojournalism. And that was really the first time I had heard of it. And immediately I was like, this is amazing. You get to spend all this time in really cool spaces and get paid for it. Like, I want that job. So that's sort of how I first heard about it. And then the way I actually got started in it is during university, I did an internship at a company called A-Frame Studios, and they only do architectural photography. And I started as an intern, then moved on as a retoucher, and eventually I became like a second shooter there as well. So we'll show a couple projects I did when I was with them. Most of these projects have been done since then. But that's sort of how I got started. How did you get started, and when was your like interest in interiors first come about?
Well, I feel like with interior photography, it wasn't something that I learned about in high school, or it was something I planned to pursue out of university. But I think towards the tail end of university, I was looking just like at a lot of blogs, and a lot of them were like interior design blogs or design, just like design in general or craft blogs. So I was always just really inspired by the spaces that like Emily Henderson was doing or SF Girl by Bay was featuring. There were so many, Poppy Talk, Design Love Fest, all those different ones. So I just like naturally just had an interest in it. I've always loved design since I was young. And A-Frame Studio, like I'd heard about that when it actually belonged to its original owner, Bob Burley, who was a professor of both of ours, but it was called something different when he owned it. What was it called?
Design Archive.
Design Archive. So then when Eugene and I started dating and I learned that he was working at A-Frame, I was like, oh, that's so cool. Oh my God, this guy I'm dating like shoots interiors. Wow, I lucked out. So that's kind of like through.
We're dating, if you don't know, spoiler alert.
Yeah. So I think just like looking at the types of like places that Eugene was photographing, and it wasn't necessarily just restaurants. He would also photograph like a lot of hospitals. I feel like that was a big thing that A-Frame focused on. And then also like homes, really beautiful homes from different people who lived in Toronto, but may have had a home like outside the city. So I just thought that was really neat. But it wasn't until like many years later, after we started dating, that I would start to shoot interiors myself.
Yeah. So that's kind of how we got involved, and we'll be answering some of the questions you've been submitting to our IG stories kind of throughout, showing our work and talking a bit about it. But if you have any questions you want to throw at us right now, just use the comments or question sticker thing, and we'll try to get to them throughout this as well. We're aiming this to be about half an hour, 45 minutes. If enough of you are around, we'll keep going for a little longer. But yeah, why don't we get into some images?
Yeah, let's do it.
So as you know, we just launched our new portfolio of interior photography. So this sort of prompted this whole interiors week. And a lot of the work we do, we like shoot a lot, and we're always like, oh, this will be a great case study project. And just when you get busy shooting, oftentimes you don't have time to update your website, which is a good problem. But obviously nowadays, like probably most creatives, we're not shooting because of said pandemic. And we've had time to update our website, put together an awesome portfolio, and talk to you. So fun things, I guess, in a time that could be better. But yeah, so if you want to keep an eye on the questions, I'll just talk about the Broadview Hotel for a second. So this was actually the first project that we got to shoot together, really, right? Like, I think so.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This was
typically for many years I would shoot interiors, and Becca would often assist me on those shoots, and
Yes.
she would shoot portraits or other types of shoots, and I would assist her. And we kind of just like worked like that for a while, and obviously we do shoots on our own as well. But this was the first project we shot together, and the way we kind of approached it, it was a pretty big project. We had to shoot it over 2 days, and we were photographing the entire hotel because they just finished, they were launching, and we were hired by the hotel to create all the imagery to kind of sell the hotel. So we spent two like 14-hour days there, maybe, shooting everything, like literally everything. And I did a lot of the wider feature shots, and Becca did a lot of the details. So maybe this is actually a good question. Also, let us know how like what that experience was like, but also sort of like the difference in lenses between shooting wides and shooting details.
Right now?
Yeah. Well, like what was your experience like shooting like a project together for the first time?
Oh, it was really fun. I think I just have a eye for approaching just like different furniture items or details, just from, you know, looking at blogs, just looking at photos in general from like other photographers I admire. But also just from shooting, you know, you shoot events and you shoot weddings, and especially at weddings, you're shooting different details. So like eventually you're just going to be developing an eye. And you just look for things that are dynamic. So like really striking lines, or if you want to show off a feature of a piece of furniture like this chair. You also kind of want to provide a sense of presence. So I remember with this photo that we have up right now, you're not just like photographing the chair to like shoved into the desk. Like I pulled it out, I turned it slightly more towards me. It just, I don't know, gives like a better sense of like someone just got up from the room or whatever. And then with details, also, I feel something that I've learned a lot from you is Eugene really understands what the different designers are like looking for, and what's important to them in terms of being captured. So he always likes to say that, you know, there's a lot of thought has been put into the different like materials and fabrics that have been selected. So you really want to be able to capture the contrast between different different items, I guess.
Surfaces, materials.
So like I like might think it's like an amazing shot, but Eugene's like, no, you have to like get in closer, like pull that chair out so you can see like the backsplash of like the underneath of a bar or something like that.
Yeah, and as far as Hoyt McNorton, you asked about what's your favorite walk-around lens versus interior photography lens. And there's actually a mix. So one of the lenses we use most often, and it's for shots like this, is a tilt shift lens. And you probably, if you haven't done architectural photography, you probably haven't seen it before. But essentially it allows you to so this is the shift or the tilt part. This changes the focus plane. And then if you want, you can also shift it. So as you see, it comes up and down. And these lenses are pretty expensive. This is the Canon 24mm tilt shift lens, but you really need it for interior photography and definitely for architectural photography. It allows you to keep all your vertical lines straight while still being able to move the image around. And especially for images like this one, it allows us to actually create like a stitch. So Daniel asked if we use like try to get everything in a single image or do like a series of exposures. We kind of do both. For every frame we shoot, we go through and do like a stack of exposures from super dark to very bright. And then we also sometimes do these stitches where we kind of like shift the lens over. For a shot like this, you know, in a pretty cramped hotel room, how do you get that like width without using a super distorted wide lens? We do that with a tilt shift lens. Whereas for the details, what kind of lens do you use?
I think just starting off with just if you have it like the 24-105, you don't, like I know like a really shallow lens like a 1.8 or something, that's like gonna look cool and give you that nice dramatic out of focus background, but like a designer or whoever, like the owner of this space, like they like want their items to be in focus. So definitely starting with a lens that it's at least f4, but you're gonna be going like way up. Like at least like 6.3 or something like that.
Yeah, it's less important to have a super fast lens.
Yeah, you want something that's just going to make sure the whole item is actually in focus. So a 24-105 is great for that. But I will say like shooting certain details, I was thinking about this earlier, an 85 can be really great because I find that provides the least amount of distortion. You know, a 50, they say that's like what our eyes see, but if you're getting close up to an object with a 50, things are just going to look weird. But with an 85, it's actually because with the 50 it's just slightly too wide, but with the 85 it's a more narrow point of view that still looks like what your eyes see. So an 85 for those closer details are great, but a zoom lens is better for like the shot of the chair that we just had up before.
And also just for efficiency, if you don't have a lot of time in a space, a zoom lens will allow you to work much faster to run through those details. So sometimes when I'm shooting a space alone, for example, this Nike store, I'll go through, shoot all the wides, and then throw on a zoom and quickly do another pass shooting the details because it just allows me to do it much faster. So anyone who's joined since we started, feel free to drop your questions in the comments and we'll be answering the ones that were submitted as well. But this project is interesting because it's kind of like there's a few different types of architectural photography you can do. Before we were working for the hotel, they hired us and that's kind of just more commercial. But this was like a retail space, which is very common to shoot. Retail spaces get turned over frequently. And you can see the top image is actually, both of those are stitches. So doing these like really wide panoramic images and also just being able to get like the full facade of a building is important. The other thing I'll say, like just a quick tip when you're shooting retail spaces, a lot of times any clothing items or whatever on the rack it just gets like really filled in just because they put a lot of product on there. And oftentimes one of the first things we'll do is we'll go through all the racks if we're doing like a really in-depth shoot and pull out literally like half the items to just make it feel a little airier and a little bit lighter. So Daniel asking, how often have either of you played the role of blurry walker in your interior shots? Oh, way too often. We'll have a few, I think, photos with blurry people later.
Yeah, I think Eugene definitely has more experience in the blurry walking than I do, but I'm familiar with it for sure.
As an assistant, I've gotten to play a doctor, a sushi chef,
a student walking around.
Students, boardroom executives, all and just slowly moving back and forth to get those nice blurry photos. If you're not sure why people do blurry photos, one of the reasons is because it kind of like anonymizes them, but also it lets you publish the pictures easier. You don't need model releases, and also now it's kind of like a cool aesthetic as well. And the way you do that is just by doing a slightly longer exposure than you normally would, and you can literally have the person stand and just kind of like rock back and forth a little bit. So they're not completely blurry. You see the shape of the person, but you can't fully make out like their face or anything like that.
And there's an art to the blurry walker. Eugene's taught me how to do it, and it can be challenging.
So at the end of this, we'll do our blurry walking course, 5 easy payments of $199.
Get those heels ready.
So this next project is residential interior, which like for me is one of my favorite things to shoot. I don't know how's that for you?
Oh, I love it.
This was also a project we shot together. Do you want to talk about this project? Hey, Anthony.
No, you go ahead.
So this project was shot, probably like most of our clients are in this type of work are interior designers. So this project was shot for Daniel Campbell Design, and it was like a huge home reno, completely top to bottom home reno with a huge extension. And again, because the family kind of had to get kicked out and a lot of the furniture is removed, new furniture is brought in this instance. A lot of they can't be gone from their house for like several days. So again, we shot this project together. Doing kind of like me doing a lot of the wides. See ya, Daniel. And Becca doing a lot of the details. So this next one is the Drake Commissary. And this is a cool set of projects. This is one I shot and Becca assisted me on. But this was actually shot for a story for the New York Times. So I've been really lucky to get to shoot a bunch of New York Times travel stories over the last couple of years. And this one was all about kind of like the businesses on Sterling Road. So there's a big difference between shooting for like interior design clients and editorial clients. First of all, you can't, for the New York Times especially, you can't edit the photos a lot. So you can do kind of small adjustments, but you can't manipulate the pictures. Then often, you have only like half an hour maybe we do them in. So you're really going in and getting a few key shots rather than like telling the full story of the space. And similarly, like, trying to get like action of the people. One thing I like to do in spaces that have a lot of people like this one is get the restaurant to reserve a couple of the tables, so you can see the front tables are reserved, so we can make sure there's no people in them. And that way we can kind of see further into the space and get a lot of that depth, rather than having like people cover up the majority of the frame just because someone decided that's their favorite chair that day. Something. What are some of the other questions from the stories that we had? So actually, this project reminds me of one of the questions. We were asked like if we had any nightmares. Do you want to read that one?
Yes, it says, any great horror stories? What lessons did you learn from that not so great experience?
So this was a project for, I did a book on U of T architecture, but back when I was assisting with A-Frame, we were shooting a lot of hospitals, and it was it was post the 2009 recession, and there was a big like hospital building boom, probably not too dissimilar from what will happen after this. But essentially we were shooting all these hospitals, and when you're shooting hospitals, you're in there for like a long time. And in general, interior days are super long, and it's right at the end that you make like terrible mistakes. And one of my jobs as the assistant was at the end of the day backing up all the photos off the card or hard drive onto like a second hard drive. And using a Mac, like what essentially I did is I copied one card over and I saved it. And then when it came time to copy the next card over, accidentally I copied the files that I had just copied onto the hard drive onto the new card, erasing all of the files that we shot on that card. And, it's not like I just deleted them so we could kind of like pull them back. I literally overwrote it, and we lost a whole day of shooting, which was like, I was terrified, but I let the lead photographer and the owner of the company know like that this happened. I'm so sorry. I volunteered to do everything I can to see if we can get that data back from the file. I drove around to data recovery places. We weren't able to do that. We eventually had to notify the client. I did that shoot for free. I did the second shoot. We went back to reshoot for free.
Okay.
And then I did all the retouching for free. And Ben, the owner of A-Frame, was very nice and like didn't hold it against me at all. And I think
That's
kind of
great.
understood these things happen. But that was one of the biggest mistakes. Like I also forgot a laptop in a Simon store right before we flew out of Ottawa. And luckily we remembered and got it just in time.
It's always the things that like happen at the end of the day when you're like just trying to like hustle and clean up, or you're just like really tired. It's not really a horror story, but I think also it's just sometimes the space isn't set up for what you needed it for.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about one of the first interior shoots that I assisted you on, which was at the Trump Tower, which is now the Adelaide Tower. We were shooting the restaurant. We were shooting several spaces.
To be fair, we were shooting the restaurants.
We were shooting the restaurants, yeah. But it was America, the restaurant that's like at the top of the hotel. And I just remember it was supposed to be set up for like dinner atmosphere. But because we were shooting literally throughout the night, they had already flipped the wine glasses and stuff over to like coffee cups for the next morning. I don't think there was anything, like we just had to say, sorry, like that's, right? Like we didn't.
Yeah, you encounter weird things like that.
Yeah.
Like you just can't redo it, I had a thing where we were shooting in the Bay in the West Coast, and all of their lights were controlled by the Toronto
Right.
office, which is just wild to think about.
Yeah.
So we literally couldn't control any of the lights until time caught up, the Toronto office opened. So you really got to plan it out a lot. I wrote a bit about this. Hey, Lucy. In one of our recent posts as part of Interiors Week, but you really gotta like figure out the logistics.
Yeah, and you're just gonna, like, you had to explain to Ben that you messed up with overwriting those files. You just have to explain to the client that obviously it's not realistic to go through and switch like all the glasses on the table just
Yeah.
for the shoot. So, hi, Lucy.
So, and again, if anyone has questions, feel free to drop them in. But yeah, we're gonna keep going. So I realize these photos that are showing up are slightly out of order, so I'm gonna try to put them back in. But this is a project Becca shot on her own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I shot this last June for Camby, which is owned by our friend Camille Byrne. And yeah, she carries all blankets from Peru, where her mom is from, and then a lot of other beautiful home items as well, such as candles and ceramics. But for this particular line, it's not in this image specifically, but Camille and I, we went out to a little cabin in Sable Beach to document her new summer collection. So she had a beautiful line of different blankets that were inspired by like summer sunsets and being by the lake. And she just really wanted that cozy vibe. So this was really enjoyable for me to shoot because Camille had a few images in mind, specifically like I want like this angle with like the blanket over the bed, but she also gave me a lot of free reign with a lot of the pictures. And that was great for me because like I mentioned earlier, I used to read a lot of design blogs, and just seeing like beautifully like decorated rooms with items like put in a very specific spot, I got to channel all of that inspiration into these pictures. So and like that includes setting up like little things like the mug and I think like the sugar bowl on the table. And I was also kind of thinking about like, what would Eugene do? Like, what's the story that we're trying to tell here? So I did like a wider shot of this space, and there's also a detail of the blanket, because it's not just about like, I'm not trying to capture the space, I'm shooting the item in the space to show people.
It's like a lifestyle image almost without people.
Yes, exactly. Because like you're trying to show off like the ideal lifestyle. Like who doesn't want to like look out of their like beautiful glass atrium with like a cozy blanket around their shoulders, sipping coffee in the morning, and then go over to their telescope and watch some cardinals go by. I don't know. So this was really great. If you want to go back to the previous image. So this was just like a really fun space to shoot in. So this shot is actually shot in the same room, but sometimes you just got to make spaces work. So we shoved over the dining room table, and I just had this nice flat wall to work with. I actually had to edit out the camera and tripod out of the mirror, of course.
Which happens a lot.
Oh yeah. And that's just always an interesting experience. So for a shot like this, she wanted to showcase her pillowcases and her rugs. So we set up this little scene. The plant was there in the space already, so I pulled that over. And it's just about making like a composition that is nicely balanced, has really beautiful color. I think it's like a really interesting contrast between sort of the very like old school, like almost like 1960s-ish chair with this more rustic, with more rustic accessories. This was a really fun shoot. This was like a dream come true shoot for me, just from, reading blogs back in the day.
And one of the tips is if you do need to remove window reflections, sometimes it's easy. You can just kind of like position yourself in a spot on a blank wall. But if you can't do that, or there's a really complex reflection, what I'll do is after I shoot the frame, I pick up the camera and I go to as close to the mirror as possible and do a shot at the same height looking back. And then you can use that to just just cut out the sort of like frame and drop it in pretty well over it. So
we can answer maybe like Anthony's questions, and this is also similar to a question, like how do you naturally balance exterior window light?
Yeah, so Anthony, whose question you probably see, is a super talented interior and architectural photographer and videographer as well. So definitely check out his account. He's shooting a ton. I don't know how he does it.
Jealous, Anthony, jealous.
Yeah, so do we use mainly ambient light or artificial light, which is like a great question. Honestly, a lot of the time we're using ambient light. That's sort of like our main light.
Yeah.
So for example, a project like this where it's like huge spaces, we're only pretty much using ambient light and we're doing stacks of exposure. But and then just kind of like blending the image in. This was a project essentially for Osgoode Hall. It was like a virtual tour where before law students could come through and tour the space, but for whatever reason they're no longer allowing that. So we created this like virtual tour of all of the spaces in this kind of like historic building, so that university students could go through it, and there's like a public collection available to be viewed. So that was for the Ontario Justice Education Network. And those are the kind of things I actually really like doing, is these sort of like projects that are for education, that are like promote creatives, give people access to somewhere where maybe they couldn't go themselves, and just like building large scale collections like this. Those are like some of my favorite projects personally.
Yeah, that's something you've been channeling since university.
So I mentioned I started working at A-Frame Studio, which is kind of how I got into interior photography. So this is one of the first projects I did for them, and or not for them, but as a main shooter there, or as a shooter for them. So this was West Lodge Restaurant, and I believe this actually was like a 2-day shoot, just because this was shot for the interior designer. There's a lot of details, and like Becca mentioned, depending on who your client is, the goal of what you're trying to capture is different. You know, if you're shooting real estate, for example, which we shoot for the New York Times, you know, your goal is to just show the space, like show the space as honestly as possible, you know, make it look cool, beautiful light. But your main target is people who want to buy the place. They want to see as much of it as possible. Right? When you're photographing a hotel for like the hotel itself, you know, your goal is to show those people who might book a room like all the details and all the features, let's say, of that space. However, when you're photographing something like this for an interior designer, your goal is completely different. It's up to you to basically create sales tools for the interior designers. And what that means is like they are using these photos to then go and sell their services, right? They're not like, they're using them in decks and presentations. So any unique surface features, you need to kind of photograph a tight of that, even if you might not think it's like super cool, because that might be an important part of them describing the project or selling their next project. Similarly, they often submit these pictures for awards and publishing, which is kind of like a key use of them as well. So making sure you tell the story of the space so that people can kind of like imagine moving through the space. They don't feel lost. You don't just like show those cool feature images, but you show little moments like that. So Lucy, we chatted about lenses earlier. We use the Tilship 24 and often the 24 to 105 Sigma. And this is all going to be archived on YouTube, youtube.com/workerbeesupply, and also on our IGTV if you want to check back on that. But yeah, I really like this project. It was just like cool to shoot a really dark, moody space, which you don't often get. So it was a lot of fun in that regard. And also, this was done by Munge Liang. I believe they're called Studio Munge now. And it was just like a beautiful space, really nice, kind of like to spend time there. And the wild thing about these kind of shoots is we shoot them through the night. So we come in there as like evening setting, and we
Was this shot at night though?
shoot until sunrise. Yeah.
Okay.
So this project we did a full night shoot, and then we did another half shoot, kind of like evening to morning. So yeah, and that way you don't get any weird reflections. Like one of the things we're often fighting is reflections. So in a shot like this, you know, it's mostly natural light, but on the left there's like a bunch of window panes. We actually have lights coming in through those windows to kind of throw a little life in them, you know, so they're not completely dead, and give a little sparkle and like hint of something's happening beyond the frame. I feel like I'm always pushing for that. Is like something's happening beyond the frame. You need to show, you're kind of like hinting at a bigger story. So
can I just mention something that I was thinking about? Eugene just reminded me, sometimes when you're shooting a space such as Broadview Hotel, because this is the main example we have, there are a lot of different manufacturers that have like contributed items. So that might be wallpaper, that might be tiles on like the side of a bar, that might be the flooring, or the graphic designer who created the menus in the cafe or restaurant. We've gotten numerous emails from different people asking to purchase the images that we shot, mainly for the hotel, but these people want them because their items have appeared in the pictures, right? So that's like another really great thing to keep in mind. Obviously, that's not going to apply to every type of space you're shooting, but I was just really fortunate that there were so many different designers that the design agency selected and used that went into the space. Even in this picture that we have up right now, the neon light art piece above the cafe. We actually met the artist that night, and then it was only it was actually several years later that he got in touch with us to
purchase the images for use. And just to touch on the light point, Anthony, you probably know these, the Aputure panel lights. So this is what we've been using more often, just because they are daylight balanced, and we just use them very sparingly just to fill in. So if we set up a scene, we do a bunch of exposures. The goal is to get it like in the shot, just because it saves you so much time in post. Right. But if there's a part that's like really dark, we might just throw one of these panel lights in on low, and just kind of like fill it in a little bit so that there is a tiny bit more light.
Those panel lights have been incredibly useful, also in video.
Yeah. So let's see. One of the things I want to chat a bit about is like the sense of scale. So this is another image from our U of T project. And when you photograph large spaces, especially like institutions, you can get lost in these huge volumes of like corridors floating and larger than life spaces. So it's very important to include like recognizable objects. And oftentimes that is like a blurry person. Sometimes if classes are in session like they were on this day, right, you can wait for like half an hour for a person to walk by in the right spot. And essentially what we do in that case is we shoot the main frame, kind of like get all the exposures we need, and then we just shoot multiple frames of people walking by, different blurs, and then in post we pick our favorite and just Photoshop it in to get that perfect position. So here's another fun project we did for New York Times. So one of the things we shoot for the New York Times is their 36 hours travel series. So we've done one on Toronto, we did one on Prince Edward County, and we did one on Niagara-on-the-Lake. So what this involves is like usually 1 or 2 days of shooting, staying overnight for like the locations that are further away. And
hi, Matthew.
Essentially we're going from place to place, but we're just like hitting them up for maybe like half an hour at most. Mm-hmm. And if you know our other work, we don't just shoot interiors. We shoot food, we shoot people, we shoot lifestyle.
Yeah.
And these are kind of like the most fun shoots because we get to meet all these business owners. The Drake is like a bigger company, but we also meet a lot of like individual people. Do you have a story or something? Or
no, I just really miss doing those shoots.
Oh yeah, I know. Cheers, man. Thanks for
Anthony,
watching.
bye.
But it was super fun to, we'd go and we just drive. And one thing I've been trying to instill, like both of us have to some degree, but I really want to make it during these travel shoots, is like enjoy the work, like give yourself time to enjoy the work. It's easy to see this like article come in from the editor and think you have to like hit up every single spot, but you're kind of like selling yourself short. Not every single place is great to photograph, let's say, but also you just don't know. Some places the hours don't work out, or the distance is like makes it very complicated to shoot. So one thing we've been doing is like trying to pick like a nice selection of places that still allows the photo editor to like narrow down for those final published images, but also like gives us time to like talk to the owners more. When we shoot a plate, like try it.
Yeah.
When we're going on a drive, like be able to just like just stop in the middle of the road and shoot like a beautiful landscape.
Yeah.
If you book yourself up like super tight, you're not gonna get any of that. You're gonna be rushing. You're not gonna enjoy the shoot, and it's like, what's the point of doing all the work and becoming like a freelancer if you don't even get to like enjoy the kind of like dream jobs when they come up?
Yeah, when we were shooting in Niagara-on-the-Lake and in Prince Edward County last summer, and Eugene really took the time to do the research and pick the places that he wanted to focus on. That was so helpful because he created an actual schedule. But in doing that, basically when you're shooting out in areas like that, everything is very far away. Like it's not like you're in Toronto and you're like hitting up several stores along Queen Street. Like you are driving past like vineyards or farm fields, and like that can be like a 20-minute drive between like different locations if you're going to 2 different wineries or something. So like everything can just eat into your schedule and eat into your day so much. So just yeah, don't pack it all in. You're just gonna run out of time. The sun's
Yeah.
gonna start setting. You're gonna lose all your light.
And that's the same thing with like promising your clients too many images. Like, you need to be able to, you need to promise them enough images that gives you the time to create the quality of work that you want to create. I think about it kind of like Apple or someone, right? Like, yeah, they charge a lot for their products, but because they charge a lot, they're able to make kind of like decisions that otherwise like they wouldn't be able to make. And maybe not everyone like appreciates those decisions, and it's not valuable for everyone. But for the people who it is valuable for, there's no other choice. This is a project we shot in New York. One sec, I'm gonna take a sip of water.
It's hot in here, you guys.
And essentially, like, we were doing, or I was doing a shoot for Canada Goose.
Yes, with a colleague of ours.
That was like a video shoot in New York for like one night or something like that.
And I just got to tag along.
So we had a hotel room booked, so we decided to extend it by a day or two, which sometimes you can do. And like a day later, another client emails us and is like, hey, are you going to be going to New York anytime soon? Like, I have a client who needs this project shot, but like they can't afford to send someone there, but they want you to shoot it. Like, we've worked with them before. This piece, and specifically the glass pieces you see kind of like behind the front desk and on the sides
Yeah, like
of
the
the
panel
entrance.
pieces.
They're done by a company called Jeff Goodman Design, and they do they're like amazing glass workers. So they do all sorts of beautiful things out of glass. So this, we literally like on the morning after the shoot, we went up to this like condo, I guess, and did like an hour shoot maybe.
It was very quick, yeah.
And it was just fun. Like sometimes things line up and you get to not only do one shoot in New York, but two shoots at the same time.
Yeah.
Which is great. And it also helps to, not every client is the same. Like, this is like a small kind of like artisanal glass studio. They're not the same as like a Nike store. So you got to work with them to kind of like be flexible and make it possible for them to get those images as well. So if that means like tacking them onto another shoot, then that's great. Like they can save money on the accommodations. But we also I've flown places just to shoot a place. The coolest place I've ever been is Turks and Caicos, where I got to photograph like a private home essentially, and
Stay there.
and stay there, and in between go snorkeling on the beach, like in the backyard. So that's only happened once, but
And I wasn't there.
if any of you know someone, maybe we can do that again.
Yeah.
So
We answered all these questions pretty much. How much equipment do you take along? I guess we can talk a bit about tripods and stuff.
So let's chat a bit about that. This is a project again I shot while I was at A-Frame, and it's El Catrin, and I loved shooting this project, but it actually brings me to a good point, and that is like color balance and white balance. Are you guys photographers who are watching this, or are you just interested in interiors? Like, if you're a photographer, one thing we started using recently is one of these light discs. Don't remember what this one's called, but it allows you to get really accurate white balance. And that's the thing, if you can get super accurate white balance, DM us after, I can send you a link to it.
I'm shaking my head because this thing, I don't understand how it works, but it's incredible.
Yeah.
Like, it just takes so much stress away from just trying to get your white balance. Oh my goodness. Saves so much time in post.
So with this shot specifically, we're just think about it, like we're outside. It's like an interior that's outside. There's artificial light, which is the lights on top. There's also fire, which is lighting a lot of it. So there's just like a lot of mixed light. Mm-hmm. And I literally had to go through all that lacing in the lights and like mask it all out so I could white balance those lights individually.
Wow.
I think now I'm a little more experienced, so I'll probably find another way to do it.
Chris.
But it was like, I don't know, it was just pretty intense to do the editing on that. But that's the thing where nowadays when we shoot, it's like a lot easier to get those shots, and get them nice and white balanced. So when you have a beautiful room and you're trying to balance interior and exterior light, oftentimes we try to turn off all the lights, all the artificial lights in the space, shoot the frame, and then turn on the artificial lights for a frame so we can kind of like Photoshop them in without getting a lot of casts. This is mostly for daytime. It's also very important to use daylight balanced light panels, right? So like just to balance the light, or use filters if you need to balance your lights with the ambient light or like the artificial light in the place. So this was another project we shot for Daniel Campbell Design.
Yeah.
And Becca and I both shot together.
Yeah, this was like another incredible home that was completely extended. So the room that is up right now, that was an addition that was put on, and it just created like just so much more height in the space and so much more light as well, because sometimes we see sort of a few before photos of what the space used to look like, and it's just pretty incredible what you can do.
Yeah.
But it was really great how this space came together. Yep. Yeah.
And this is a great example of a detail you shot. Why, like, how did this come together? And I think it's like the different surfaces.
Yeah, I really loved the geometric pattern in the chair, and then I don't know, it's overall like a very clean image. It only consists of about 3 colors. So we're balancing out the sort of rectangle shape of the chair with the rectangle of, I believe that's a mirror coming down. And I don't know, you just want your eye to lead to different areas, and it kind of comes together well. You have like the swoop of the chair, the edge of the desk coming in with that striking brown wood. Yeah, it's just about seeing like how different materials can play off of each other.
Exactly. And that allows the designer to talk about that. Like, oh, well, you see, maybe like this material seems a little like avant-garde for your taste, but when we pair it with these more natural materials, it actually creates like a nice pop. So that's something we're always thinking about. Like, how do we help our client tell the story that they need to tell to whoever their customer is, right? It's less about us, and it's more about like, what do they need? What tools do they need to help get their next project, to help this get published? And hey, Andrew, and it's similar to like a magazine, right? You don't see just like all huge wide photos, even though you do see a lot of those. You see like the big featured wide image, and then you see a few details where you can learn more about specific products or maybe a lighting fixture. One thing that's always interesting to shoot is bathrooms, because
they're tight.
they're tight. You know, like when you're in a big space, like really expensive homes, like sure, there's wide bathrooms, but oftentimes it's not the case. So in a space like this, we are shooting like we're like as far back out of the room as we can be without seeing the doorway. And then we're using a tilt shift lens again, like we chatted about earlier, to create this stitch and get all those like nice clean lines. And I think maybe we chat a bit about editing at this stage.
Yeah, sure. I will say bathrooms are probably just like, they're such a unique challenge just because they're so small. If I'm shooting details, that's probably going to be things like faucets and taps. Or
tile
like
finishes.
Yeah, exactly. So inside the shower or the bathtub, there might be like really beautiful tiles. I think our client Danielle, she always does such a fantastic job of picking really beautifully patterned tiles that create such a statement. But also with a bathroom like this, I remember editing.
Here's a little sample of our tile works.
Yes.
But yeah,
Just like well, if you want to talk about editing, like because there's so much white in this space, it's going to be picking up like a lot of different light. Just so if there's
right?
there might be a window in there, so you have like a little bit of blue, or there might be yellow from like, sometimes there's just like a weird underlight, like under a mirror or something, just to create like a little something. So, but you're like, that's reflecting on like a marble countertop or like a silver faucet, and that can require a lot of work in post.
Yeah, so people think the thing's just like, the images just like come out of the camera looking like this. We should have thrown in an unedited image just for reference, but that's completely not true. We're literally like selecting out individual surfaces, creating layers out of all of them so we can control the color, saturation, contrast of every single surface. And this is where your clients can kind of like help you out a bit as well. It's really important when you're in a space to try to like internalize what color things are, especially if they're not 100% like obvious. Like, this, the drawer unit here on the right, vanity, I guess. It's like, it's not quite black. It's like a little bit of brown or maybe a little bit of blue. But you open it up in post and you have the blue reflection of the daylight.
Yep.
And your inclination maybe is to go like 100% black. But it's important to be honest to how those surfaces were. And one thing you can do for some clients, like interior designers especially, you can actually request to get the samples that they used to like plan the project, and just do a little color matching so you have a more realistic thing. And again, you got to look at that under like a single light source, like daylight preferably, so you can get a realistic color match. So if you guys have any questions, also feel free to throw them in the comments. I think we're gonna chat maybe for about 10 more minutes. But if you're new here, we've covered a lot of stuff already, like from what lenses to use, to how to remove your reflection from images, to what gear we use. Oh, hey, Routine Creative. So we're gonna be publishing this video on YouTube where you can see the images in like full glorious beauty, 1080p. Woo. And you should definitely subscribe at youtube.com/workerbeesupply. After this video comes out, Becca actually has a super fun video coming out. What is it about?
It's about me learning how to edit video for the first time, and it's coming together really well. We filmed some skits, and I have just started to add those to the overall video, and it's looking pretty funny. So I hope you all look out for that next week. It's gonna be really fun.
And I just want to shout out the Routine Creative on Instagram, who's here right now.
Yo, yo.
I highly, highly recommend all of you go follow them right now. Not only does he share a lot of great resources and tips of like what things you can use in your own work, but also he does beautiful, beautiful design and branding work, and is very like sincere about how he talks about it on Instagram. So definitely go follow the Routine Creative. If you want to dip out, follow him right now real quick and get back in here. Won't hold it against you.
I might. No, I won't. No.
One topic I want to talk about, and this is a great project to talk about it with, is styling and propping. So how much do we style or prop individual shoots? And this is really like dependent on the kind of shoot it is. So let me build like a little spectrum. A shoot like like an editorial shoot, we're hardly styling it at all. Partly because as an editorial photographer, you're not really supposed to like create the image. You're supposed to just kind of capture what's in front of you. If there's like a wet floor sign or something, or a cone, like a traffic cone in the way, we'll pull it out. But those images get very little styling. Then if we move up to like a magazine image, for example, for Bar Vendetta, we shot for Design Lines. It's in a restaurant. There's not a ton of styling you can do, but we definitely go through, we adjust all the chairs, making sure all the tables are lined up, making sure all the lights are on where they need to be. They're all similarly color balanced. Wiping any dust. We really ask the people to clean it before we shoot, but often just it's not really doable or whatever. So in shoots that are more like residential interior, sometimes we'll kind of style the space like we did in the Broadview Hotel. But that's like, we're moving a lot of stuff. We might move in plants. The designer might bring a few objects. And then we have shoots like this one. So this is like, you can almost think of it as like a fashion feature spread, where you're not really photographing the house like you are to some degree, but you're photographing this kind of like idea of a space. So this was shot for Globe and Mail Style Advisor, and the whole thing was like beautifully styled. So we shot there for a whole day, and we maybe got like 10 images, which is actually like pretty common because you just spend so much time moving spaces. I'm curious from your perspective, just because I sort of entered it through like learning by assisting a lot. What was your first the first kind of shoot maybe you did with me, like your reaction to like the amount of stuff you have to move and adjust?
This was actually something I was thinking about earlier, is that when you're looking at something in real life and then you're looking at it through a camera lens, like the perspective of something can look so different. So when I was helping Eugene shoot the bar and restaurant in the Adelaide Tower or Trump Tower, I was learning a lot of like those little tips that he had picked up from working at A-Frame. So he would ask me to go to the other end of the room and he was like, can you adjust that pillow? Okay, you need to adjust a little more and a little more, or I need to like really exaggerate the positioning of it because one, he might be seeing it, but through the camera you can't see it at all. But also again pulling out the chairs so that they look. Oh, like when the leg of a chair and the leg of a table might be like lining up awkwardly and they're just sort of merging together. You don't want that, but you also don't want things crisscrossing weird.
Well, even in this shot, I remember really tweaking the lamp angles in the back so that it just crosses that line, so that table height intersects the couch like midway rather than right on the line where the couch ends. All these little things, like that's how you instantly know if someone hired a professional interior photographer or someone who hasn't really done it.
And that can also be the benefit of just having an assistant because looking through your camera and then going back and like adjusting things 1 inch at a time can take up a lot of time.
It's a lot slower, And again, an image like this, everything about it is styled from like the books on the table to the angle of the lamp to how much of the pillow is coming out to how much
like wrinkles in
the
thing
to what direction the base of the table is standing to. And I remember even spending a lot of time like adjusting the laces on these shoes. So a lot of work is done, and that's why for these like really kind of like award-winning interior photographs, you can take like a full day to shoot 10 pictures. It's not wild at all to think about that.
So if anyone has any last minute questions before we wrap up, please get them in now.
Yeah, I think there's a couple images we haven't shown, so we'll just kind of go through them a little quickly.
Yep.
But yeah, one thing we want to mention is that we have a lot of stuff on our YouTube channel and on our website that are resources for creatives, for photographers, for videographers, and we're always making more stuff, and we're always happy to kind of like answer any question you might have. Drop the questions now, but always feel free to DM us or reach out. I think I want to chat about 2 more things that are like gear related that you might not know of. So one of the things is the kind of tripod we use. So the tripod itself is like less exciting, just get a really high quality, heavy tripod, I think, ideally. But the tripod head we use is actually kind of special. Oftentimes you'll have like a ball head on a tripod or kind of like a trigger that you can turn. And even these kind of like axis, 3-axis tripod heads where you just like unscrew it and you can move it. But what's special about this one is this is a geared tripod head. So, I can like unhook it and do large movements like that. But when I want to really dial in the shot, I can just twist this and do these micro adjustments. And that's how we can get stuff like lined up super well. And this works against all of them. Like you can move it a lot, or you can just twist it and move it a little bit. These tripods are definitely, or these tripod heads are definitely more expensive, and if you haven't purchased a professional tripod, like the tripod head can cost as much as the tripod, even more. But that's the kind of like the critical equipment for me is like the geared tripod head.
Yeah, and I prefer a tripod head like that over a ball head.
The tilt shift lens. One thing we also use a lot, like literally all the time, is shutter release. Because you're shooting kind of longer exposures, you want your images to be like usually around f9 aperture we're shooting at. And then you let your exposure run to whatever it needs to be. But that's why it's very important, because even like the shake of you pressing the camera shutter could cause the image to be a little blurry. If you don't have a release, just use the timer, like a 3-second interval timer on your camera, and you should be good to go. So I think we're going to wrap it up here. Thank you to everyone who came out. And again, I want to encourage you to go check out our YouTube channel, youtube.com/workerbeesupply. If you're a photographer, check out the How to Become an Editorial Photographer video. Not only is it like a super in-depth video about everything I use to photograph for clients like the New York Times, but there's also a really great resource pack that has like a ton of editor magazines listed on it, and where you can go to kind of like resources to help you become an editorial photographer. Similarly, we've had a lot of amazing feedback and comments on our Why Switch to PC for creative work. We have a couple videos there. One is explaining like why I switched to PC. The next one talks about like my process of buying the parts, and we're currently editing the video about actually building the PC. I've been using it for a while now. I'm not going to show it to you because you'll have to wait till the video, but it's been a really great experience. I still use Mac, so I'm not like screw Apple, but I've just gotten so many comments on that video. I think you should check it out. And there's a couple more stuff like highest paying freelance jobs if you're just thinking about getting into freelancing. Plus, we have a lot of interviews with food stylists, celebrity portrait photographers, designers, illustrators, artists, and kind of like mini docs with paper cutting artists. City of Craft, if you know that, we did a whole behind the scenes mini doc on it.
Yeah,
so,
Eugene's always providing tech tips as well.
A lot of tech tips, yeah, for how to do things more efficiently. So please, please, please check out youtube.com/workerbeesupply and make sure you subscribe. And similarly, if you go to workerbeesupply.com/freebies, there's a bunch of freebies and we're always adding more. The main thing there is our free ebook, which is how to review your freelance business and create an action plan for growth. This is like really important right now, especially. And hundreds of freelancers have downloaded this ebook already, and we've gotten some amazing feedback. People have come up to me at events and asked me like, why are you giving this away for free? And it's because we want to share the knowledge, share what we know. We think everyone should be a lot more transparent. So there's other stuff on there, but we're getting a countdown from
Instagram, but you know what? That's okay because
so we gotta go.
We just got 2 new YouTube subscribers, so thank you. Thank you for subscribing.
Thank you for watching. You can find this on YouTube or on our IGTV later, and this has been really fun. Let us know if you want to do more.
Bye.
See ya.